The emergency room doors burst open with a metallic crash as a frantic mother stumbled inside, her worn sandals slapping against the polished floor, her thin arms wrapped tightly around her unconscious little boy, whose small chest rose and fell in uneven, fragile breaths. Her name was Rosa, and her world at that moment weighed no more than 40 pounds and yet felt heavier than the universe itself, because in her arms lay Mateo, her 7-year-old son, burning with fever and barely responsive after collapsing in their tiny rented room. The reception desk was crowded. Nurses rushed from one stretcher to another. Monitors beeped in chaotic rhythm, and amid the sterile brightness stood a tall man in an expensive tailored suit, checking his gold watch with visible irritation, surrounded by 2 assistants and the faint aura of someone used to being obeyed without question. He was Alejandro Valdez, a powerful millionaire investor who had just arrived with a minor cut on his forehead after a fender bender, but his pride was more wounded than his skin. And when Rosa reached the counter breathless, begging, "Por favor, mi hijo no respira bien, ayúdenme," the nurse tried to assess the situation while glancing nervously at Alejandro, who snapped that he had been waiting too long already, and that he funded half the hospital's new wing. Rosa's clothes were faded, her hair hastily tied back, her hands trembling not from shame but from fear. Yet Alejandro's sharp eyes scanned her and her son with open disdain as he muttered loudly enough for the room to hear that people who couldn't afford proper care should not expect priority, that there were procedures and order, and that he would not tolerate being overlooked for someone who probably hadn't paid a bill in her life. The words sliced through Rosa's heart, but she swallowed her pride and kept pleading, her voice cracking as she explained that Mateo had been coughing blood, that she had no car, that she had run 3 blocks carrying him. Alejandro stepped closer, lowering his voice in a cruel whisper that still carried across the tense silence, telling her that charity cases always appeared at the worst times, and that she should have thought about her situation before bringing a child into the world. A few patients turned away in discomfort. A nurse finally called for a stretcher, and as staff rushed Mateo toward the triage area, Alejandro scoffed dramatically, accusing them of favoritism and threatening to call the hospital director. Rosa, on the verge of collapse, met his eyes for a brief second, not with hatred but with a quiet dignity. That unsettled him more than anger would have, and she simply said, "Hoy es mi hijo, mañana podría ser el suyo," before disappearing behind the swinging doors. Alejandro laughed it off, dismissing her words as melodramatic nonsense, and demanded immediate treatment, unaware that fate was already weaving a lesson more powerful than any financial empire he had built. Hours passed, and as Rosa sat alone in the dim waiting area, clutching a plastic rosary and whispering prayers between sobs, a doctor emerged with grave news. Mateo needed an urgent and rare blood transfusion, his type extremely uncommon, and the hospital's supply dangerously low. Rosa's face drained of color as she admitted she shared the same rare blood type, but was too weak and anemic to donate enough, and the doctor said they were searching desperately through records for a compatible donor. Meanwhile, Alejandro, stitched and bandaged, prepared to leave when a commotion erupted near the entrance. His teenage daughter, Humilla, pale and trembling, was wheeled in after fainting at school due to a chronic condition he had always brushed aside as exaggerated. Tests were rushed, doctors spoke in urgent tones, and within minutes the same grim reality surfaced. Humilla required an immediate transfusion of that exact rare blood type. Alejandro's confident posture cracked for the first time that day as he demanded solutions, offering any amount of money, but the doctor's reply was cold and clinical. Money could not manufacture compatible blood on the spot. In the chaos, a nurse ran in with astonishing news. They had located one potential match already inside the hospital. A relative of the little boy admitted earlier. Alejandro's mind flashed unwillingly to Rosa's exhausted face as realization crept in like a slow, suffocating tide, and for the first time in years, the powerful millionaire felt something he could not negotiate with: fear. The hallway seemed longer than ever as Alejandro walked toward the dim waiting area where Rosa sat with red-rimmed eyes and clasped hands, and the echo of his expensive shoes against the tile sounded, less like authority and more like desperation. Pride wrestled with panic inside him. But when the doctor explained to Rosa that another child's life depended on a compatible donor, and that she might be the only hope for both. Mateo and Camila if she agreed to a shared, carefully managed procedure. Rosa did not ask the last name of the other child. She did not ask about wealth or status. She only asked one question. ¿Se puede salvar a los dos? And when assured that with careful coordination and immediate action it was possible, she nodded without hesitation despite her weakness, saying that no mother should watch. Her child fade away if there was something she could do. Alejandro felt his throat tighten as he stepped forward, finally forced to look directly into the eyes of the woman he had humiliated hours before. And in that fragile silence he saw not poverty but courage, not neediness but strength. Words failed him at first, but when they came, they tumbled out broken and unpolished, stripped of arrogance as he admitted he had been cruel, that fear for his own daughter had shattered his illusions of control, and that he would give everything he owned to undo what he had said. Operating room doors and told him that apologies mattered less than actions, that compassion should not depend on bank accounts, and that life had a way of reminding everyone of their shared humanity. The procedures moved swiftly, doctors coordinating transfusions with precision, and for endless minutes Alejandro paced like a caged animal while Rosa lay pale but resolute, giving what little strength she had for two children. When the surgeon finally emerged hours later with a tired smile announcing that both Mateo and Camila were stable and responding well, the corridor erupted in relieved tears, and Alejandro, overwhelmed beyond restraint, approached Rosa as she was wheeled out, tears streaming down his face in a way no boardroom had ever witnessed. Ignoring the stares of staff and strangers, the once arrogant millionaire sank to his knees before her wheelchair, not as a spectacle but as a man stripped of ego, thanking her for saving his daughter's life, admitting that her dignity had exposed the poverty of his own heart. Rosa, though weak, gently told him to stand, reminding him that true wealth was measured in kindness, and in that moment something fundamental shifted inside Alejandro. In the weeks that followed, he returned to the hospital not with complaints but with commitments, funding a permanent emergency assistance program for low-income families, establishing a rare blood donor network, and personally visiting patients without cameras or publicity, while Rosa and Mateo were offered support not as charity, but as partnership, education opportunities for Mateo, stable housing, and a job for Rosa within the hospital's community outreach department. Yet the greatest transformation was invisible to the public eye, found in the way Alejandro listened before speaking, in the way he treated staff by name, and in the way he held Camila closer, aware that life's fragility could humble anyone in a single afternoon. The story of the day a millionaire knelt before a poor mother spread, quietly through the city, not as gossip but as a reminder that empathy can bloom even in hardened soil, and that sometimes the most powerful lessons arrive through humiliation that breaks the shell of pride. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that compassion costs nothing yet changes everything, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join a community that believes in stories that touch the heart and inspire change. Because every new subscriber helps us share more powerful lessons, like this one with the world. And you never know whose heart might be transformed by the next story you choose to watch.